Welcome to another edition of the Eye on Life podcast. It is go time today with Ben Darnell, you're a jack of all trades. You're a sports guru. You're a hat backwards wearing, COVID hair kind of guy.
Oh.
There you go. Look at and so is that ginger I see there?
A little bit. I'm a strawberry blonde is what I like to say.
What is the difference between a strawberry blondes and a ginger? They're very close because my son is a true ginger.
Yeah.
But there seems to be, the light skin tone. I'm sure you have to probably lather yourself up with sunscreen when you go out in the sun. I guarantee that, right? Am I right about that?
Not as bad in Connecticut as it used to be down south, but yeah, for sure. I always have my golf bag is fully equipped with more sunscreen than it is in actual golf equipment.
Yeah. Maybe I should start wearing sunscreen. I'd golf a little bit better maybe if I had some, that I don't know, anything would help. So you're listening to the Eye on Life podcast today, and please share, like, follow. We have Ben with us today, who is a co-host on a local show, the Rob Dibble Show here in Hartford, Connecticut. And I'm still waiting. I'm still saying that, and I know Rob. I've met Rob before. When are we putting Ben Darnell's name before Rob Dibble? Is that coming anytime soon, or is that a contract issue that we can't get into? It's probably.
I think it's a contract issue at this point, but I'm going to tell you right now, it's better to be the one that your name's not on it, just in case everything falls apart. It's bad when things are great, but it's great when things are bad because no one points at you for it.
He's in the line of fire, and talk about somebody who's used to being in the line of fire as one of the former Cincinnati Red bad boys. Now, has he ever gotten angry at you and gone Tim Tuffle on you or Lou Piniella on you or anything like that? Has that ever happened in the studio? Or
it's very interesting because coming here, and it's a weird dynamic too because I'm program director of all these ESPN stations in Connecticut. So I'm Rob's boss, but I'm the co-host, and also the relationship, has got to be there if you're doing a radio show for sure. But coming to Connecticut, knowing I was going to be on the Rob Dibble Show, I felt like I knew more about Rob Dibble than the people who were employing Rob Dibble here at iHeartMedia. I'm like, you know who this guy is, right? Like, do I have to send you the YouTubes? Because I will. But when I got here, it was honestly, Brian, mind-blowing of how much of a teddy bear the guy is. Now, I'm not going to lie, he has a short fuse and can blow up in an instant, which makes his personality great, especially for radio. I'm not going to lie either. We have had instances where we've gone back and forth at each other. But like most friendships or most relationships, you will have that. And it's healthy, and it's been great for us because every time we come out of something like that, which is honestly few and far between, the show's been better and our relationship's been stronger. So I'm proud to say that I have had fights with Rob Dibble, and we are still friends. And even if you ask Tuffle, him and Rob will still get along. They actually just had like a dinner or a lunch together not too long ago and talked about him hitting him. And Rob was scared because he thought, oh man, this guy. But it turns out they're best friends now. So it's usually water on the bridge with stuff like that.
What about Lou Piniella? How's that relationship?
Really funny because I know Lou Piniella as a Cubs fan and I was a big Lou Piniella fan, and I did not know really the Lou-Rob Dibble relationship other than what we know of if you watch the YouTube video, The Fight in the Locker Room. So we had Lou on, I forget the reason, it was a baseball reason, but we had Lou on maybe the second to third month of me being on the job. And I knew of the story. I did not know that they had not been talking like normal for years. So when we had them on, it was almost like a reconciliation of that moment from 20 years ago. They both told each other they loved them, and they both almost started crying. And it was like, it wasn't about what happened in the locker room. It was just like, I can't believe it's gone so long where we haven't caught up and we haven't told each other that we love each other. And it's like, for me as a sports fan, I shut up and I just sit back and like soak it in because I can't believe I'm witnessing this moment between these two sports figures that I love. And I know the history, yet I'm getting more of a behind the scenes of what really happened emotionally with those two.
And that's, I mean, that's kind of when I say iconic. I mean, it's a known. I mean, you still see it on footage out there.
Yeah.
and anybody who's not familiar with it, I won't spoil it for you, but Google it, YouTube, Lou Piniella and Rob Dibble. And as you mentioned, I mean, again, and that's what sports is all about. You have those moments of intensity, emotions can always, and we're going to talk about that today. Emotions can sometimes get the better of people, but at the end of the day, even though sometimes it's years later, we're all human. I mean, it's sports. And hopefully people can have that kind of relationship where they end up being friends, even if it's 20 years from now. But we all know, listen, I've had fights with my friends over sports. We all have. I mean, it's ridiculous, but it does happen. But let's be very clear. So Ben and Rob have the show here in Hartford. So we're here to talk about sports today, but we're not talking about X's and O's. And I brought Rob up, but the show's not about Rob. Today's about you, Ben. And before we get started, there are a couple things. First off, I want to recognize our show sponsor, Must New York. Great masks. If you're looking for some masks for your studio, mustny.com. In fact, you can get. They probably would do some Hartford yard goats for us as well.
I bet they would, yeah.
Chris and Monica Bossard out in Orchard Park, New York. He is a Giants fan. We'll talk about that in a second. But I know Buffalo Bills fans are thrilled these days. But and if you want to email them directly, it's must.newyork spelled out @gmail.com. What do you think of the whole mask wearing thing? I mean, you hear both sides. I still think it's appropriate that people should be wearing their mask. If you're going to wear one from Chris. But I'm wearing my mask out. Are you still wearing your mask out when you're out in public and everything? I mean,
definitely. I've been very fortunate to have interviewed a lot of people from Hartford Healthcare, and especially Keith Grant, Dr. Wu, who are the epidemiologists over there, who are so much smarter than I am. And, the whole process from February to a couple of weeks ago. So I've been schooled by professionals on exactly what's happening, I think, more than most Americans. It is weird, too, because I'm from Indiana. A lot of my family still lives there. I have a lot of ties in North and South Carolina, and I have a lot of ties in Colorado and California. So I have all these phone calls that have been going on during this pandemic. And honestly, Brian, I told my sister yesterday in Indiana, I go, it feels like you live in Iceland and I live in France and Greenland. Not comparing what those countries are doing, just saying like, it feels like you are in another world than what we are in Connecticut. And obviously I'm a big sports fan and want sports to happen. And I thought for the Southeast of America, the biggest leverage you could have on the people down there to wear masks is, do you want college football? Do you want college sports to happen? In order for the presidents and everyone else of universities to make it happen, governors included, those numbers have to come down or they're not going to put those kids at risk, which is the way it should be. When I'm inside, and I hold my staff really accountable, and I'm really proud of how much my guys who are, all sports guys and all macho dudes that, think that they're tougher and invincible, but everyone on my staff has been keeping their distance. We have the floor marked off in a zone. We play a 2-3 zone around here, as in 2-3 people cannot be in the same zone. Right. Only one person per zone.
Love the sports analogies.
Well, it's the way they think too, so it's easy for them to understand. But listen, 1,000 deaths a day, 40,000 contracted. That's still going on a daily basis. And I'm a fan of trying to get those numbers to zero before we go into what our normal lives would be. And I think the best way we can do that, especially if you look at 1918 and what happened with the Spanish flu and how they were able to get numbers, it's very simple. Just put your mask on when you're around people, especially indoors.
And if you do, make sure it's a Must NY mask, and we appreciate their sponsorship. And again, it certainly can't hurt to wear the mask.
Yeah.
It's only going to help. So anyway, I'm not here to preach. We're not here to preach politics and masks and everything. But if you're going to wear a mask, wear the sponsor mask. They're great. They do a great job. Chris, they're amazing. He sent me a picture of his laundry room the other day. There are masks all over. They're washing them in his house. They're great. Wear the mask. So before we actually, and believe it or not, Ben, we actually have, this is why, so this is part one. Ben is kind enough to indulge me and come back again next week. And Ben, this is why we're doing two parts here, because we haven't even gotten to the show yet. And we're already almost 10 minutes in. A couple things before we get officially started here that I want to acknowledge. First off, we have some new listeners, which I acknowledge every week because, number one, because I appreciate it. I know you guys appreciate your listeners. If you don't have the listeners, you don't have the show. We have some listeners that joined from Australia.
Awesome.
And people are always happy in Australia. So if they watch the show, I hope they stay happy. Brisbane. I think they're from Brisbane. So hopefully
right.
we'll keep them happy. Also, Northern Belfast, Ireland. So I'm pretty excited about that. We're true. So right now I was looking at, and it's not like the numbers are huge. I'm not trying to say like I have millions of listeners in Ireland. I'm not trying. It's probably like a couple, but I'm excited that we have the international flavor to the show. So the only continent that we're missing right now, based on my metrics, is Africa. So wherever you are in Africa, come on, give me some love from Africa. I mean, there's plenty of people over there who might want to hear a podcast anyway. So there's that. And then also show some love domestically. Council Bluffs, Iowa. Hey, Council Bluffs.
That's great.
I'm excited about that. And San Diego, California. We have some. I do have some family out there. It may be them. So thanks for listening to all those places. Spread the word in those markets. And again, I appreciate everyone listening, taking the time. I know everyone's busy. Hopefully, this gives you a little bit of respite from all the everyday pressures and stress of life. Maybe we cause more stress and pressure. I don't know. We'll see. But there are a couple of things I want to run by you. And again, this is still the intro here. So again, this is part one of with Ben Darnell, sports guru, sports talk radio show host. We try to get that out. And there are a couple of things that are bothering me today. And number one is some trends that I'm seeing. And again, a lot of my rants over the past couple of weeks have been social media related. And maybe that's just because I'm on social media more now because of the podcast. I'm not posting my kids on there. I'm not, happy sons and daughters day. I think that's all great. I just don't really do it. But there's one trend, and on the last show, the trend was that people are taking photos of their feet. Have you seen that?
I have not. I know it's happening though.
It's happening. So the other, and this is sports related, and I really want to get your take because you have great takes. And then I'm going to talk about the history of how you and I know each other. I'm seeing people on these, you have, I'm following a lot of channels with, Giants, which I'm going to get into in a second. I'm going to rant about that. Giants and Bills and football in general. And I'm noticing a trend that people are posting questions on these message boards on social media, asking what time the game starts on Sunday. Now, I appreciate people wanting to know what time their team plays. But I have several issues with this, Ben. And maybe I'm overreacting. I usually do. People have heard me rant about Nickelback and the hatred that Nickelback gets. And I'm for Nickelback. I'm pro Nickelback. You probably heard that.
Yeah.
But I don't understand why anybody would take the time to ask the question of when their team plays. First off, if you're a fan of the team, you should know the schedule. Number two, even if you don't know the schedule, if you actually have a life, is there anything easier in life to find than when a team plays on Sunday? Is there any? Even if you live, and a couple of people remarked, I wrote back. I'm like, I'm not sure, and I wrote back on the message. I'm like, why are people asking this question? Well, time zones are different. People in Europe. I don't care if you live on Mars. You should easily be able to find out when the Giants are playing on Sunday. Am I wrong, Ben? I mean, is this? I know I shouldn't get that upset about it, but what do you think about that?
When it's like casual conversation, I got you. And I'm with those people when a lot of people, like I'll say it too, and just in the office, like, what time are the Patriots playing this weekend?
That's
understandable. But when you do take the time to get online and type out the actual question, the number of clicks and finger movements that you would do would be less if you just go to ESPN.com
right.
or NFL.com. And even from there, you don't even have to click on the schedule. It'll probably be somewhere where you can find it on the actual screen. The worst is when my bosses ask me, or when someone that is in the sports world will email me a question such as that. And like, it is an older generation, Brian, that does not think first to check the internet real quick. And the young kids, gosh, they're on it. I know people who don't know football at all, and you throw that question out, and it's like a challenge for them to find it within 5 seconds on Google just to make you look bad. But
that is true. It could be a generational thing, but I don't know. I just feel like even the old at this point, you should be trained. And my gosh, even if you watch TV, I mean, you could listen to the radio, you could watch TV. It doesn't even have to be an internet thing.
Right.
Anyway, everywhere. I don't know why that bothers me. It does. You're wasting your own time. You're wasting everybody else's time. I know people just say, well, just don't answer it. But I have to answer it. I had to answer it. So the other thing, since we're talking sports, and we're not talking X and O's, but we're talking more off the field, right? So this is the first time you've done the show, and people who do watch the show or listen to the show regularly, do know that my attire is typically a black shirt. And I'll just be totally honest with you. Today I was looking at my black shirts and I had like there were like armpit stains on them. And I'm like, I need a whole new thing of black shirts. So I'm not wearing that on anything. So today for the first time, I'm actually wearing a gray shirt. And I'm wearing you see the Giants insignia on here, which I'm embarrassed. I'm angry. I'm frustrated. We're not going to get into the Giants that much. But my question to you, as a sports guy who has your own radio show and who has again, I've heard your show many times driving to and from work, and you have great insight. What are your thoughts on fair weather fans, on that kind of thing? Do you feel like, for example, I'm frustrated, I'm angry. I lived in Buffalo for a while. I'm following the Bills this year because they're fun to watch. I'm not a Bills fan. I'm not going to pretend to be a Bills fan. I will stick with the Giants. If I've always said, if the Giants go 0-16, which they actually may very well this year do that, but if they go 0-16 for 5 years in a row, I'm still wearing Giants. I mean, I don't wear jerseys anyway, but I'm still wearing my Giants shirts. I'll watch most of the games, but I may not watch them as religiously as I normally would. Should people stick with their teams, or is it okay to kind of say, I've had enough. I just can't do this anymore. It's been 20 years. I mean, it's been 8 years for the Giants, but 20 years, I'm moving on. What do you think about that?
Well, as a Cubs fan, I will tell you that the championship gets better as an aged wine.
I do agree with that. Yes, that is true.
The one thing, though, that as a Cubs fan that I've been schooled on is the Yankees fans who are rabid and crazy. And if last night they won against the Indians, if they were to lose, someone would have been threatened to be fired from the fans. And I feel like Giants and Jets fans used to be like that, but a lot of people have just totally checked out. And when you totally check out, you almost give them the excuse of like, you guys can do what you want to do, and I'll still wear the shirt and I'll still be. But if you're not an angry fan, sometimes it will never change. And it's all about the ownership, especially in the NFL. I mean, the reason the Jaguars are always the Jaguars and the Browns do the Browns stuff and the Jets are always the Jets is because of the people in power that make those decisions. It's not necessarily the players being bad as much as it is the general manager putting the right Jimmys and Joes in with the guy using the X's and O's. And the stat that I keep going back to, or the question I have for the Giants and the Jets, is since San Francisco now is 2-0 in MetLife Stadium this year, will they have more wins than both of those teams at MetLife Stadium this year? That could very well happen.
I have to be honest with you. I don't even think that's a question. I think I don't think there's any question that the 49ers are winning more games at MetLife Stadium than those two teams combined.
But even with
there's any question.
I mean, if you have to keep going, because as soon as you jump off, it's embarrassing to jump back on. And
it is.
In most sports, even the Jets, it wasn't that long ago that Rex Ryan took them to the AFC Championship. And you never know. You really never know what one thing could happen, and all of a sudden your year could blow up. If you all of a sudden abandon that team before that happened and now you jump on, I'm not cool with that. I am fine with the people that hate their team but still wear the shirt, and because it's been a part of their life and they are not going to basically disown their friends and their family because they're losing right now. You got to stick with them, man. But I'm a Bills fan too. My family's from Buffalo, my mom's side of the family. And that's another perfect example. Like, look at all those people in the horrible years they've had to suffer since Jim Kelly and Thurman Thomas. And now they've stuck with them, and now they're partying, man. It's the biggest party in Buffalo right now.
Well, the thing is, and as you know, I think sports fans, they have long memories, but they also have short memories.
So true.
And I can tell you right now, if the Giants win the Super Bowl, even within the next 10 years, this will all be worth it to me. I mean, the Giants Super Bowl wins, you can never take that away. I will never give up on my team. You talked about ownership. What John Mara has done to this team is, I believe, is criminal. I can't even go. It's like, I used to make fun of the Knicks with James Dolan and everything like that. Now it's my own franchise. But I will always stick with the Giants. But I will say, Ben, and I don't know what your thoughts are on this, but there's one thing worse than anger, and that's indifference. And I will say that I know a lot of Giants fans right now, including even myself, because I'm not yelling at the TV screen anymore. It's just not worth it.
Right.
Even as a season ticket holder, even going to the games last year, these fans they're not even getting angry anymore. They're numb. And I understand that people are going to say, well, I was a Bills fan, or I was a Browns fan. It's been 30 years. Or I get that. But it's been a bad 8 years for the Giants, even with the one playoff appearance that they had, which was a debacle, and then the whole boat incident and all that garbage. But it's just the franchise is a joke. And I will always stick with them, though. When I came out of the womb, I was a Giants fan. My kids are Giants fans. And to your point, hopefully I'll still be alive when this happens, but when they see success again, it really will be that much sweeter. Let me ask you this question, because we had the first show that I ever did for this podcast was a Superfan show. The idea, we had a license plate guy from the Giants, and we had Bills Mafia on as well, Dell from the Bills Mafia. And let me ask you this question as a sports fan: is it okay to wear a jersey with somebody else's name on it, or is that like Loserville?
I don't know. I've always kind of went back and forth on this. I have older jerseys. The reason I don't like getting new jerseys anymore or supporting anyone that's currently playing is because most likely they're going to leave your team and that jersey is going to be a joke. And it's immediately after they leave. Right. And you can't wear that anymore. There is a weird association with some people that when they wear the jersey, they almost feel like that person. And when that person wins, they win. And when that person loses, they lose. And they That's wear weird. That jersey as if they are B. Like if you're wearing a Tom Brady jersey, you are Tom Brady B. You're Tom Brady number 2. But you're still Tom Brady somehow.
Are you still? Does that mean you're still with? Are you with Giselle too? Then is that?
I think that you have that feeling. I feel like you might not actually be with her, but since you're wearing the jersey, you're kind of going out with Giselle too.
Magazines don't count.
But then I like too. Like I love older jerseys, especially when they're redone. And especially when they're from like a college career. One of my favorites is an Indiana State Sycamore Larry Bird jersey. I just think that like that teaches kids lessons when you walk around with a Bird 33 that's white and light blue. Yeah. I really do like jerseys that have a bigger meaning than what the actual team or the franchise is. I would say, there's a lot of jerseys right now that you could wear that will get you a political reaction. And it's not about the sports. You walk around with a number 7 San Francisco jersey right now, you're going to get a political reaction. If you have an older Washington jersey on, you might get a political reaction. And, and I think that is appropriate too. There is this weird tribalism with fans, though, that take it so personal. And when they wear that jersey or when that person does something, it is such a reflection they feel on themselves that they take it to an extreme of either they fight the person who's razzing them for that person doing bad, or they really rub it in and be obnoxious for that person being good. There's just people that really get overboard with it, and you can typically spot them with the multiple jerseys that they wear. It's cool if a guy or a gal wears the jersey of the favorite person, especially on game day. But when the guy has like 30 of the same guy jerseys,
right?
Something's weird about that.
And I sort of feel like it's. And again, I think jerseys are fun. I used to wear when I was younger. I used to wear them, and then I just realized I'm going to ask you this question in a second too. I just realized that I really. It's not the players that I love the team. The Giants are the team. I don't love. I mean Eli, he's great, and these guys come and go. I didn't love Beckham. I don't love the players. I love the team. These guys come and go, and I'm as much as Eli did for the franchise. I was a fan well before him, and I will be a fan long after him. So I think it's cool when people wear jerseys. I do have a couple of issues. I think wearing out in public when it's not Sunday is a little weird. I mean, I guess again, I'm not really. It sounds judging. I'm not really judging. I just think that's a little weird. The other thing that I will judge this a little bit. I've never done this, and I'm sorry if you have. And it's fine. It's not the end of the world. If you have your own name on the back of a jersey, I think that's a little cringy. I think that's a little weird. I don't know, because then you're not even. You have something that you're getting.
Oh, I was gonna find my Cubs Darnell jersey that my sister made for me.
Well, if it's a gift from someone, that's okay. But I mean, I'm not wearing a Boyer jersey like Boyer 56, like I'm trying to be LT. I don't know. It's a little weird. I'm sorry. I would rather have somebody think that they're Tom Brady and they're with Giselle versus thinking I am not Tom Brady. I'm actually the quarterback of the Patriots.
I've always just wanted to be a Cub so bad, and then like now, like you said, I'm not an Alfonso Soriano fan. That's like my least favorite Cub of all time.
Right.
But I'm a huge Andre Dawson fan.
Sure.
But I love the Cubs regardless. If you're wearing the jersey, you're a part of the Cubs, man. And I always wanted to be one. So I root for the team so much. I have so much Cubs gear. I am on the team, Brian Boyer. I might not be getting paid. But I'll tell you what, I've been a longer team member than thousands of them Cubs. Thousands of them that actually get jerseys given to them.
And that's my point. And I'm glad you said that, because that's exactly my point. Because I really believe that when the team, and especially football with only, the short schedule, 16 games, right? But I do believe that there were times where not that I earned, there was no money to give me, but as a fan, I drove from either, when I was living in upstate New York or when I was younger or in Connecticut.
Yeah.
I would drive to the game. I spent I was up probably before the players were to get to the game. It was cold. The weather was terrible. And then I had to drive home in the dark, cold, snowy weather. Whereas the players were, 15 minutes from their home, going out to dinner with their families, enjoying their dinner with their families. I was eating the leftover burger from the tailgate, right? I really believe that oftentimes, I'm not saying everyone, but it oftentimes there's more sweat equity put in by the fans than the players. We care more sometimes. I really do believe that.
Well, just buying a ticket these days, and I know that doesn't give you, and like everyone says when they get kicked out of a venue for being obnoxious or screaming obscenities, that, hey, I paid money to be here. Like, yeah, that's true, but you can't act like a jackass the entire time. But when you do spend just the money wise for families nowadays, when you're spending $500 to take your son to a game of any kind, NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, hockey, and you spend that kind of money, you feel like you have put in an investment to give you some kind of say-so on what's going on here. Like, I do believe that. I do feel like you do have a piece of stake. You're a stakeholder in this stock that's going on. Real interesting, Brian. You would love Japanese baseball, because in Japanese baseball, they have fan clubs like we do, but theirs are a little different. Each fan club has a section of their ballpark, and they actually have fans, like Asian fans, and that's like their thing. And they all have the same fan. These fans have so much control as season ticket holders that if they don't want the first baseman on the team anymore and they're on the first baseline fan club, they won't go to the games and they'll boycott. And in order for them to come back, is the management has to get rid of that first baseman and get what they want. And it's wild how that works, but it's worked to a thing of beauty where people who show up to Japanese baseball, and if you ever watch it and it's not 2020, it's jam-packed and they're just rabid fans, because they are not only have the stake in buying the tickets and buying the memorabilia and buying all the things, but them as a group of fans have political power within the actual team. So just imagine if all the Jets fans showed up in one section, all of them wearing garbage bags or shopping bags over their heads, and if the ownership actually cared about that look, maybe they would do something about the Jets.
So you're saying in Japan, the ownership will look at that and be like, oh, this guy's gone.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I love
because
that.
The owners are also under a microscope from the fans. If the fans don't like the ownership, they'll boycott the whole game. And that's power of the people, man, in a sports kind of way that I love.
That's the biggest voice of all. I've always, and it does happen. It has happened the last several years at MetLife Stadium, which, by the way, is a god awful stadium. By the way, I love the old Giant Stadium. I miss it. I can't stand MetLife Stadium. I think that the money that they put into that, it's horrible. And the Giants record there is terrible. It's about as sterile as you can get. There's no home field advantage. The amenities aren't that great. Anyway, that's a whole. I could do a whole show on just my hatred towards that stadium. I'm still a season ticket holder. But I want to ask you this. Okay, so let's talk about we'll talk about the Cubs, right? And I'm trying to think of a player who was. I'm trying to think of a beloved player who was traded from the Cubs and came back on another team.
Well, Starlin Castro,
Okay.
not too long ago, he was a shortstop that everyone loved because he was like 20 when he showed up as a shortstop, and then it just started raking and having great success with the Cubs. I forget why we ended up trading him, but it was a part of the Aroldis Chapman deal, and this was real weird for us Cubs fans. At the time, Aroldis Chapman was under investigation for Major League Baseball and domestic violence issues. We didn't want any part of that, but man, we wanted a part of that 100-mile-an-hour fastball in the ninth inning. And that deal is still hard for me because if it wasn't for Aroldis Chapman, we would not have a World Series championship. That is for sure. But I don't know if I want that World Series championship with that guy making it happen. I would rather have Starlin Castro go 0 for 20 and still be on the team and not win the championship, just because like morally I feel better about that. And that might be weird, and I know that that's not all Cubs fans, but that's just the way I feel about it. And I feel bad that Starlin doesn't have a World Series championship. I think he's on the Marlins, who play the Cubs today. So
That's right.
And when
that's
he
right,
comes up to bat, I always root for him and stuff, and that's a perfect one for me at least.
And that's a good. And so so you're listening to the Eye on Life podcast. Ben Darnell, sports talk radio show host here in Hartford, Connecticut, and we're talking about not X's and O's, but we're talking about kind of sports culture on and off the field, that kind of thing. And I will say, Ben, that this show is a perfect example of you go with the flow of the show. That was very prophetic right there, by the way, that the go with the flow of the show, because I have not gotten any questions that I had actually planned to ask you, and I knew that was going this way, which is why I wanted to do the two parts. I wanted to get to your background at least. We may just wait on that till the next show, but you just brought up two really good points, and I do want to cover that because I don't want the show to get too long because we have a lot to cover on the next one as well. But number one, because I want to bring up the Aroldis Chapman and the whole ethical and moral thing about that. But before I go there, I do want to ask you. I think you just answered my question. I feel like and I'll use obviously my Giants as an example. Once a player leaves the Giants, I say good riddance. I don't wish ill on that player. But as far as I'm concerned, goodbye. I could care less about you. I don't care if you brought me a championship. Maybe if you signed an autograph for my kid or something like that, then maybe that's a different story. But otherwise, I say good riddance. People get emotionally attached to players. When Justin Tuck left the Giants, went to play for the Raiders. Goodbye, fine, okay. You did great, thank you. When Eli left, he didn't play for another team, but thank you. Landon Collins, right, heading to the Redskins. Screw you, goodbye. But you just said that you would actually cheer for someone that you're in Wrigley Field. You're in the friendly confines, and a player that has contributed to the Cubs is now playing for another team. You will stand up and applaud for that player. Yes.
Yeah, I'm definitely rooting for my team first, but there's a part of me that roots for that person too. Peyton Manning's another good example for me because I'm a split Cubs or Colts Bears fan, and Peyton. You can go to Indiana right now, and you will see Peyton Manning jerseys hung in restaurants all over the place. I do believe 18 is still the most played roulette number in all casinos in the state of Indiana. But when he was on Denver, it's hard not to root for the guy to be successful. Just because when you know how the deals get done and you realize it is a business, and most of the time, I would say 9 out of 10 times, it ain't the player's decision, whether it's how old they are and how much they think they have left in the tank, or it's just the business of wheeling and dealing in pro sports. Sometimes guys get put on other teams, and that's just the way it worked out. And I used to be so tribal about it, almost like you, where good riddance. get out of here. If you're not on my team, I don't got time for you. But now being in the mix of knowing the ins and outs of the business and getting to know athletes as people, you realize, like, you know, these guys are out there trying to do their best as possible. And they do happen to wear the jersey that you support. Sometimes that's the extent of it. Sometimes guys like Mookie Betts leaving the Red Sox. I'm not a Red Sox fan at all. Huge Mookie Betts fan. And if you know anything about the guy off the field, you would be too. For them to get rid of him in the fashion that they did, that wasn't Mookie's decision. You know, Mookie, yes, is worth a lot of money. And could he have just played for the league minimum? He could have, but that in a business sense is messing it up for a lot of different people other than just Mookie's family. So when you start learning about that stuff, when you start learning about the people, and honestly, the more I'm around all of that, the less and less I am judging a person on what team they're playing for at the time.
That makes sense. I guess if you know the person and you know they're a good person, and you know, it's a great point. You know, it's not always the player's choice. It's sometimes the ownership's choice. I just feel like, I guess maybe it depends on the circumstances. For me,
Yeah,
it's very rare that I would cheer somebody in another uniform, no matter what. At the very least, I might stand up out of respect. I don't think I would cheer. I might not boo. Although if I was going to the Cleveland Browns game this year against the Giants, I would be booing Odell Beckham Jr. Certainly, I would. But, well, I should say I probably wouldn't. It's not.
but Landon Collins is a great example. Like, I don't think you should support Collins. He wanted out of there.
He wanted the money.
Right. He did not want to be on the New York Giants, and that's completely different. Peyton Manning wanted to still be in Indianapolis.
Right.
And
so there are circumstances. I guess each circumstance is different.
I almost root for the person coming back against my team because I want my team to realize they made a mistake.
Right. See, I need to be a bigger person then, because I don't care that my team made a mistake. I still want to win the damn game.
Well, it's also different when you're losing all the time, you know, and you just like, the hell with whoever. I just want to get a win.
In fact, I actually just made, as we were talking here, and I'm wearing the Giants shirt today. If you know, some people are listening to this, not seeing it. If you're watching on YouTube, you're seeing, I think that I am going to, and I will wash it, but I think I'm going to wear this Giants shirt until they win a game. So instead of the black shirts that I've been wearing, I think I'm going to wear the Giants shirt until they win. So this could be a long haul here.
Do you believe in sports superstitions like that?
You know, that's a great question. I really don't. I used to have a Giants ball that we would, like, my kids and I would rub it, and it seemed to have fairly good luck. But I'm not one of these. I'm not washing my jersey until they lose, or I'm not cutting my hair. I'm not shaving. Trust me, I'm not that self-important that I believe that I have any. You know, the outcome of the game is not determined by me by any means. But, you know, I think that's a fun thing. People have that. It's traditional. It's fun. Are you like that? Do you feel like you know what? I'm going to digress again here. Do you have a time check? But I've totally forgot my phone. Do you know what time it is? I'm going to ask this on the show.
10:40. 40 minutes. 10:40.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a couple more questions.
Okay.
And then we're going to do part 2 next week. Steve Bartman. Okay, as a Cubs diehard, what are your thoughts on Steve Bartman? In fact, it was just on the other day. I've seen it a few times.
The 30 for 30.
The catching hell.
Yeah.
And that whole thing, when it happened, really disgusted me. The way that he was treated, you know, the way the whole thing played out, I thought was absolutely disgusting. I would expect that from Philadelphia, not from Chicago. You know, it's just, and I felt like the team, I guess they stepped in a little bit, but the team I thought could have done more. But were you at all angry at this guy? I mean, doing something that anybody else would do. In fact, there were other people around him that were doing the same thing. It just happened to land on him.
Exactly.
It's your impulse to do that. You see a ball coming, you go to catch it. It's not like you're trying to interfere with the game. What did you think of that whole situation? Even now with fans interfering and then they get kicked out of the game.
I forget the bartender's name that's in that row of people that are reaching up for the ball as well, but he has a last name that's like Jinx or something like that. Or if he would have had the ball, that would have been even more of a story. But knowing in the moment, I remember the moment. I remember where I was. I remember exactly what happened. And you'll see this on Catching Hell too. the reaction of Moises Alou in right field, not being able to try to catch the ball to get the out, permeated the feeling across the ballpark and all throughout the country who was watching. I love Moises Alou. He should have handled himself better. And because that vibe went through the rest of the game and really the rest of the series. It wasn't the end of the series either. They could have won the next night.
Right.
Steve Bartman is one of the biggest Cubs fans you'll ever meet and still is to this day. He has been offered to come back to the stadium, offered to be given a ring for their World Series, and denies it every time, doesn't want it because he is more about the bigger whole than himself. He's more about the Cubs than himself. Yeah, such a raw deal that he got. But honestly, Brian, at the moment, knowing you're on a 100-year drought, knowing that everything's clicking, like we have got the team, we have got the path, we got to beat the Marlins, that's it, and we're in. And we've counting down the outs at the moment. And every out was so precious. And especially getting a foul ball out is house money. It's like it's a wasted at bat. Runners can't move. It was so house money. Moises is a great outfielder. He would have made that play. So at that moment, with all of that combined, I don't know. I don't remember exactly how I reacted, but I did feel like, here we go. This is how it unravels. This is now the curse has come back to affect us once again.
But as a fan, did you say, that freaking guy that did that, oh my God, I hate that guy. I want that guy dead for doing that. And because, I mean, that was the reaction of a lot of people. I just can't imagine. I've been angry at players when I was just talking about this with a buddy of mine the other day. I forgot what year it was, several years ago, when Jay Feely was with the Giants and he missed 3 field goals against the Seahawks. And I was like, I hate that guy. But like, I just can't imagine having that much vitriol towards a fan who would do what I would have done, or anybody would have done probably. Rather than, I mean,
I think it's amazing too. And the other element of this story is that Steve's wearing a radio headset and listening. He doesn't know the effect that he has caused if he's not wearing that headset.
Right.
And I hate the footage, and I remember this even beyond the Catching Hell documentary, when they're ushering him out and everyone in the ballpark is that's the guy. No one in the ballpark really knows. It's kind of a group think at that point where everybody, who cost us this time? Who was it? Who can I blame and get mad at? And he was just the person. You could have pointed at all 5 of those people on that foul line, but for some reason or another, that guy gets all the heat.
Do you think it had anything to do? And I think they did talk about this, if I recall correctly, in the 30 for 30. But do you think it had anything to do with the way he looked? Just, I mean, he hit this guy. He's wearing a turtleneck. He had the glasses. Do you think it was like some like muscle guy that they would have been like, oh, whatever, he's cool, good try, should have had it? Or do you think it was anything with the way that this guy looked? Like maybe he looked like the kind of guy in high school, maybe that would, which I hate to say this, but could have maybe been picked on. And I almost feel like that was the atmosphere. It's like the kid was in high school getting picked on.
Well, let's say it's an 80-year-old grandma or an 8-year-old little girl.
Right.
I don't think they get the same kind of heat. I totally agree with that. I think that his look makes him an easy target, and people felt very secure in pointing him out, knowing they weren't going to catch any backlash from it either whatsoever. Not only does he look the way he looks, he's a lone wolf. He's solo. He has no backup. He has no friends out there. I still to this day feel horrible for the man because I think he's a better Cubs fan than I am, and I've been loving the team ever since I was born.
Yeah, that whole thing was unfortunate. And honestly, I mean, I'm not a Cubs fan. I'm a sports fan. I'm a human, and to this day, that still bothers me. I always felt bad for that guy, and almost like brought tears to my eyes watching that segment. What this guy was. Think about if you were in that situation, not you, but like if you're in that situation, completely just oblivious, just doing it, what anybody would do, and it was really unfortunate. But
honestly, Brian, I think about that all the time. If I was in that situation, I would have made the catch.
Well, right. That's why people should be angry at him, not for messing up the game, but for not making the damn catch.
How you dropped that?
So I want to wrap it up here because I know we're going a little long here, but I do want to ask you one final question while it's still on my mind, and we're going to cover a lot more next week. But you talked about Aroldis Chapman, and you talked about the domestic abuse case that was brought against him. and everything's always an allegation, right? Until it's proven otherwise. But I guess, kind of in a nutshell, because this could be a whole show, but as sports fans, how much of a player's conduct off the field should impact how we feel about that player as an individual, that player as someone that we enjoy watching, somebody that can contribute to our team winning. And I know it probably depends. I mean, if somebody, that was a, domestic abuse, these are all serious incidents. Domestic abuse is heinous. A murder is heinous. A rape is heinous. What Tiger Woods did, heinous, but okay. I mean, I'm not justifying it. He didn't kill anyone. But I guess, so maybe there's a threshold. But I always remember the whole thing and I'll use Tiger Woods as the example, because even after that happened, as much as I thought it was disgusting what he did, I still enjoyed watching him play golf. I still wanted to see him and Phil in the final round. I'm not there to necessarily judge his personality. And I guess you look at it in other ways as well. Do you want I always use this example. Do you want the pilot who is a really great guy, but he doesn't have as many hours, in pilot school? Or do you want the best pilot ever, who is going to get you there, you're safe, but maybe has some fetishes that are a little unethical on the side? So it's the same thing with sports. So what is the threshold? I guess, what is the threshold? How much should we as sports fans care about our teams, the players on our teams, their conduct, even on the field sometimes with the way they act, and off the field? How much?
I honestly think I think it's a bigger issue when you're talking about team sports than it is individual sports. With Tiger Woods, like, I totally agree with you until you become a spokesperson. And once you become a spokesperson and present yourself as some kind of role model one way or another, you've entered the ring of outside of sports personality, which is good and it's great. And I do believe that, all these athletes are human beings and they can't be robots. And if it was a bunch of robots out there representing your city, you wouldn't like it as much as you do now. With team sports, I always wonder how a locker room goes when someone finds out about domestic violence. I was in a football locker room in college, and as soon as I got there, before we had a first practice, we had 2 suspensions for linebackers of domestic violence. This is in the 90s. I don't even, domestic violence to me, I'm not schooled on anything like I am today on what goes on. And I looked at it as a suspension. These guys are suspended for messing up just like any other suspension. But when you're talking professional sports and you're talking about guys with daughters and wives, and you have a guy that has a different outlook on life and the way you treat women, that's got to affect the way you play as a team together. That's got to affect your locker room decorum. With individual sports, I do think it's different. There's a lot of jerks out there on the PGA. There's a lot of jerks out there in USTA. There's a lot of great people too. Honestly, the majority of them are great people. But I really do think it does affect. As fans, do we need to know? That's a good question. I don't know. I like knowing people's backstories, no matter if it's good, bad, or ugly, just because I think that is just as much a part of the game as the actual physical part of the game. I do believe in the 90% mental, and I do wonder how your mental capacities are affected. Just thinking of Tiger Woods, for example, if you have all those situations going on city to city, how does that affect how you play the game of golf? I don't know. I don't think I could do it. And I think a lot of people are wondering that as well. But when we dig into people's personal lives so much without it being solicited, one thing too, Brian, man, half these guys and girls just give it to us because of their Twitter feeds and their Instagram. I mean, they're just, here's my life. And then you question some of it. And Kevin Durant's a perfect example. Like, whoa, why are you questioning me about my life? Well, like, you're putting it out there for everybody, and you're representing this association now, or this team. It is every circumstance. It is different how you handle certain sports and certain athletes and certain teams. And I do think we dig into a lot that we don't need to know. But I think that a lot of these stories, especially when they hit the criminal ranks and they get law enforcement involved, are important for a fan to know, or someone that's trying to digest the game and what's really happening out there. Because if I know, and here's the one that really doesn't get talked about, that happens all the time, that doesn't hit a Twitter feed, it doesn't get found out by the media, but it's going on in every locker room, is the adultery and the cheating that goes on between the players' girlfriends and wives.
Of course.
And I have learned so much from hanging around the crews that I've been hanging around of the 1990s baseball players, of how that is so true back then and so true to this day. And when you see someone get traded, Brian, and you're like, why did he get traded?
Mm-hmm.
Or you see, maybe bad chemistry on the court or on the field, that might be a reason. And a lot of us don't know about it. And if we did know about it, we'd be able to understand it a little bit better. Is it our business? Probably not. Probably not. But it does explain some behaviors of what we could see on the field.
We're probably better off not knowing. It's like making the sausage. You don't know what you don't have.
True.
You do not want to see it being made,
True.
but at a barbecue, it tastes really good. And I think for me, it is a threshold, because to your point about Aroldis Chapman, if there's a guy on my team, on the Giants, right, who is going to help my team get to the playoffs and win the Super Bowl, if he, commits a theft or something like that, I'm sorry. I could probably deal with it. Maybe he gets suspended, but then he comes back. I get that. Or if he's committing adultery, I'm not. Is it my place to judge that? It's his life, not mine. I don't necessarily agree with it, but he can play on my team. I'm not that I'm the one allowing him or not. But domestic abuse, rape, child abuse, I have certain thresholds where I'd be like, to your point with Aroldis Chapman, I would rather not win the championship with this clown, this horrible person, and have somebody with a little bit more of an ethical standards than this person on my team. To me, that would be like an asterisk kind of thing. You put the asterisk. I don't want that person on the team. They don't deserve it.
Well, I think that all the time. I always use the phrase, and this happens in the NFL preseason more than ever, you don't need them. You don't need them. Antonio Brown comes to mind with the Patriots when they signed Patriots. You don't need them. You really don't. Even though you didn't have any receivers and he's very talented, look at what happened. Like, it blew a lot of things up. Your plans are now washed away and you got to start completely over. And that was then. And obviously the Patriots have been able to make it happen. But I lost my train of thought. When we do have these people on our teams that might not be the best of people, I think of football all the time, because it is hard to be a choir boy as a linebacker in the NFL. There are some of them are in the league. Luke Kuechly, Thomas Davis, who I covered in Carolina, are about as closest as I've ever found. But Joe Paterno said this quote a long time ago that I think of, and I forget who the linebacker was. He ended up going I think it was Fletcher, London Fletcher, maybe. Yeah. I don't want to throw him out there. It couldn't have been him, or might not have been him. But someone got in a traffic road rage situation on the campus of Penn State. And this is late 90s. And it was one of 7 or 8 instances that happened on campus with campus cops of Penn State football players. And Joe Paterno said to the media, listen, I'm not recruiting angels here. I'm recruiting football players. And that's all he said. And I think of that all the time, is that a lot of these guys, they grow up with a lot different life experiences than you and I. And violence in their world isn't as big of a deal as it is to you and me, just because of their environment. And when in football in particular, that is an encouraged behavior on a daily basis. To flip those switches on and off has got to be difficult. And I know it's, for you and me, it feels like, don't be a jerk. Easy to say, easy to do. But a lot of these guys aren't angels. And a lot of the touchdowns and tackles come with a lot of off-field jerkitude. But that's the way it is.
And even just to play the game, the violence of the game itself, even, you
gotta be in that mindset.
How do you turn that off? Not that I'm rationalizing anybody doing anything illegal off the field, but it is a challenge. This has been a great show. This is part 1. We're going to go a little bit backwards because there are a lot of questions I'm going to ask you next week, like your background. We didn't even get to that, but I want to hear. So we're going to talk next week. We're going to talk about a little bit more about maybe some of the more colorful characters that you've met in your time. That'll be interesting. We're going to talk about why us fans get so upset when Skip Bayless or Mike Greenberg or any of these talking heads, Colin Cowherd, Dan Libertard, right? We get so upset when these guys say something that we feel like is wrong. Why? I want to know about the kind of the culture of sports talk radio. It's fascinating. Stephen A. Smith, right? Another one. So we talk about. I want to talk about that because I want to get your viewpoints on that. Before we end, where can people find your show, Ben? If any, because you can listen to it from anywhere.
Yeah, if you're in Australia, if you're in Belfast, if you're in what was the Coral Bluffs, Iowa.
Council Bluffs. I don't think they have corals in Iowa, but they do have councils.
If you're in any of those places, 979ESPN.com. Quick listen, live link, and Monday through Friday, 97.9 FM in Hartford, also 1300 AM in New Haven. And gosh, I think that's it for now. I'll figure some more out next time I come on.
Okay, so the other thing next week we're going to chat, which we talked about in the first show also, is why are we even having these conversations? It's sports. It's very important to us. We know that, but why do we go so crazy? We did have a full show on that, but I do want to get your perspective as somebody who's in the industry, and then I also want to talk a little bit about the media and how and why people are consuming sports the way they are these days. Ben, thanks so much. Part one with Ben Darnell. Radio and sports guru with hat on backwards. I can't pull it off. You clearly can. And in the meantime, make sure you get your masks. Must NY, our show sponsors. Thank you, Chris and Monica. And in the meantime, until we talk to Ben next week, keep an eye on life. Thank you.